What's going on, guys, and welcome back to a new video. Since I released the Spring Security video, you have been asking for a refresh token video and how we can implement this. So in this video, I will guide you step by step, and we will be using the project, the Spring Security project that we implemented before. So I invite you, if you did not watch it yet, just go ahead, check that video, and also check the logout video so you will understand the whole parts. So in this video, we will implement together a refresh token mechanism that will allow us to refresh an access token. So before we start, if you're new to my channel, just go ahead, hit the subscribe button, enable the notifications, and follow us on social media, on LinkedIn, on Discord, and all the social media. You will find all the links here in the description of this video. So with no further ado, let's get started. First of all, let's start by understanding what is a refresh token and why we need a refresh token. So a refresh token is a token, and a kind of a token that we use and we need to refresh our access token. And this helps us improve and make the security of our application and take it to a higher level. So this means that we can reduce the availability or the validity of our token, and every time our client or our REST client needs a new token, so all he needs to do is to pass this refresh token and ask for a new one. And this will, as I mentioned, will limit or will reduce the expiration date of the access token, and also the refresh token can be available for some time, let's say for 1 week, and after 1 week the user needs to authenticate once again to get a new access token and also a new refresh token that will help him and allow him to refresh the access token. So this is mainly what is refresh token. And now I want to give you some benefits of using a refresh token in your application. So first of all, as I mentioned before, is security. So the user will have an access token with a short period of time or a short validity period of time, and then he will use a refresh token in order to actualize or to refresh that access token. The second advantage is revoking access. So for example, if you have, or if you want to force all the users to re-log in again, all you need to do is to revoke your refresh token. And once the access token gets expired, so the user has to reconnect or to re-log in again in order to have a new refresh token or a new access token. So talking about revoking and even, like, if we may say, logging out. So here I want to remind you and invite you again to watch the logout video. So from that one, you can also inspire and understand what I'm talking about right now. Also, having a refresh token in your application reduces the user interactions. This means that the user does not need to reconnect every time the token gets expired, and all you need to do is, from your front-end application or from your REST client, is to check if the token is expired. All you need to do is to perform a refresh token and pass this refresh token, and then you get a new access token. So this is how this is, generally speaking, the refresh token mechanism. Now let's start and let's dive into our application. Let's go into the code and start implementing this mechanism. So now open again your Springboot 3 JWT security project, or just go ahead and clone it from the GitHub repo, and you will find the repository in the description of this video. And first of all, as we mentioned, so in order to implement this refresh token, we need to think about it, how we can implement this. So just to remind you, here we have all the configuration, we have a demo project, and we have this part for the token and for the logout part. But here our focus for the moment will be on this part, on this authentication, where we have our authentication controller, authentication request, and authentication response and service. So here we will start by enhancing and extending our authentication response, because when we talk about refresh tokens, we need to return the access token plus a refresh token. So first of all, I will just go ahead and rename this one to access token, access_token, or let me name it like this, access token. And then I will create another field which will hold the information of our refresh token. So it's gonna be private string. Let me make this full screen, and then refresh token. Also, if you want, you can also use this JSON property annotation and give your property a different name. So let's call it maybe access underscore token. This is just, I want to show you that we can use different notations or like different namings. And here I will call it refresh token. So this is the first part. So now we have our access token and refresh token properties, and these two properties will be returned to the front end or to the user. Then the next step is we need to go to this authentication service right here, and we need to change the authentication service. So here we made a renaming so we can see the changes here. But before that, let's go first of all and update or adjust our JWT service. Within our JWT service right here, we will need a new method that will help us to generate a refresh token. So first of all, I want to make some changes in here. So I'm going to make this one full screen. So I want to make some changes. So here I will extract this secret key and I will move it to the properties file. So I will make this one private string, and then I will rename it to secret key. And then I will take this value and then I will move it to the properties. So now I will open my application property in here, and I will move to the bottom and I will create some custom property. So here I will call it application, and then or app, or like you can call it whatever you want, and then security, and then JWT, and then secret key, and just paste the value right here. So now I will copy this property, and then you can always see the shortcuts that I'm using right here. And then I will go back to the JWT service, and then I will ask Spring to inject it using the value annotation. So now it's going to be $, and this one. So now we are injecting the secret key in this variable called secret key. All right. Now I will create two other variables. So for the JWT, I will create expiration, and this one, it will take some value. Let's say it's like that for the moment. And then for the JWT, I will create a refresh and then expiration. Or we can call this one refresh token and then expiration, and we give it another value. So for the JWT expiration, I will make it 1 day. So I will comment it out. So this is 1 day. And then for this expiration right here, let's make it 7 days. So we need to multiply this by 7. So I have the value right here because I just don't memorize it. And here it's 7 days. All right, so then maybe for testing, we can reduce this one in order to show you how it works. And now for the refresh token, I will set it to the expiration to 7 days. So we will have a refresh token available and valid for 7 days, and we can use that one. So first of all, I will copy this, and also I will create here a private long JWT expiration, and then I will inject this one. So this, and then I will copy this one and I will do the same. So I'll just duplicate this, and now I will call this one refresh JWT or refresh expiration, and now I'll just paste the correct property. So now we have our two new variables, the JWT expiration and also the refresh expiration. Now let's move on and start to do some refactoring within our code. So the next step is we have here this generate token method, which will call also this generate token. This one takes only user details object, and this one it takes claims and also the user details. And now what I will do, I need to make some refactoring for this one, because here instead of having this constant or fixed expiration date, I want it to be automatically injected or calculated based on these two fields that we just injected. And I want it to be, in order just to avoid the code duplication, and I can just make some refactoring here. So I will just cut this code, and here I will create a private string build JWT or build token. Let's call it just build token as a shortcut. And this build token, it will just return this one. So here we will need the same claims, or like the same object, map, user details, and claims. So here, let's make it this way. And now we will ask also for a long expiration. And here, instead of this one, I will just make it expiration. All right, so now I just refactored my code, and here for this generate token, the general one, the one that we need or we use to generate a token, I will just return build token, and then I will pass the extract claims, and then user details. Sorry, extra claims, not extract. And here I will pass the JWT expiration. So when we make a call to this generate token, now the code will remain the same. So here I will also duplicate this one, and I will call it generate refresh token. So for the refresh token, we don't need this extra claims. So I will just pass a new hash map like we did right here. So instead of the extra claims, I will pass a new hash map. And here, always make sure that you pass the refresh expiration instead. So now we have a new method, which is generate refresh token, which is using the method that we just refactored, which is build token. And here we can pass extra claims, we can pass the user details, and also whether the refresh expiration token or date, or the JWT expiration value. So now let's move on and create and start implementing our refresh mechanism right now. After creating these two methods, I will just close these classes, and I will go back to the authentication service where I have the register and I have the authenticate. So for the register, as you remember, and as we implemented before, so here when we register a new user, we will also return the access token. You can also just return a void or return whatever you want, because I got a lot of questions about this. And the reason why we return an access token after a registration is just to prevent or make it easy for the user in order not to reconnect again, in order to have the access token. So he can register and get the access token, and directly you can redirect the user wherever you want. So here we have this JWT token, and now I will create a second variable, and I will call it refresh token equals. And then I will use the same JWT service dot refresh or generate refresh token. And here I need to pass my the saved user or the user. It's also the same. Like it will be exactly the same as this one. All right, now we need also to pass it in here. So the refresh token is also my refresh token. Now we need to do the same in here. So I will just duplicate this, call it refresh token, and here it will be generate refresh token. And then we pass the user as parameter. And now we need also to pass this refresh token. So now we have our methods up to date, and both of them, the login or the authentication and the register, both of them, they will return a refresh token. So now we have almost everything set up to start implementing our refresh token endpoint. Now let's go to our authentication controller, and then let's create a new endpoint. I will create a post mapping in here, and this post mapping, it will be refresh token. I will just give it this name for the endpoint, and here it's just refresh token. So now within the body, we won't require or ask for anything. All we need to do is the following. So first of all, this is going to be a void. And then I will ask, or I will just inject the HTTP servlet request and response. So this one I will call it request. and the HTTP servlet response. And this because the request, this is the object where we can get or read the authorization header, which will hold the refresh token, and the response is the object or the class that will help us to re-inject or to send back the response to the user. All right, so now it will be just service.refresh token, and then I will just pass my request and response as parameter, and now I will just go ahead and create this method. So it's a void, and now I can just inline this one to make it more readable for you. All right, so now let's go ahead and start implementing this refresh token method. So now the implementation of this refresh token is something really easy. So what we will do, just to show you that it's so much easy, I will go to the JWT authentication filter right here. Let me make it full screen, and then I will just copy this code. So I will copy the code from here until this last line, so don't include the filter chain. I will close it, and then I will go back to my authentication service, and then I will paste it. All right, now let's start cleaning up. So here, let's do it line by line. So here I will just use HTTP headers dot authorization. It's just for a better code. This JWT, I will just rename it to refresh token. And then we will keep the user email. And here only one thing, if we don't have the authorization header, because as I mentioned, the refresh token should be sent as a bearer token in the header as within the name authorization. So it's exactly the same like the JWT filter or the authentication filter. So here we have this auth header if it's null or doesn't contain bearer token. So all we need to do is just to return. So remove that filter chain, and then we extract the authorization header, and then the user email is also we need to extract it from the refresh token. And now all we need to test is if the user email exists. This means if it's not null, and we don't need to check again if the user is authenticated or not. So now this one, I will just make it a variable, and instead of using the user details service, because we don't have it here, we have only the user repository, this one, so we can use this object instead. So it's gonna be this dot repository, and now it will be find user by email, and then or else throw. So in case we don't find the user, we will just throw an exception. Now this is token valid. We can just skip it because we will not be validating the access token, but we will be validating the refresh token. And also I just want to mention this, if you intend to implement or like to also revoke the refresh token, also think about implementing this in this place where we just removed this instruction right here. So here, instead of we can keep it as it is actually, because within the token table we can store also the refresh token, and we give it a type refresh token, and then you can base on that to finish your implementation or revoke all the tokens. So now I can also remove this one. So here, after extracting the username and making sure that we have the username, which is not null, then we go and check if we have the user in the database. And after that, we will try to validate the token, this refresh token, based on the user details that we need to pass. So now we don't need any of this. So I will just remove it. Now, in case everything is fine, what we will be doing next is to generate a new access token. And of course, don't forget and don't make the mistake, you need to keep the refresh token. So the refresh token, you don't need to change it. Otherwise, you will have each time you refresh your access token, you will be also refreshing the refresh token, but the refresh token needs to stay the same, because as I mentioned, for example, if you give it an expiration or a validity of 7 days, so the refresh token needs to stay 7 days, and unless the refresh token is also expired, and then the user needs to log in again. So let's do this. I will create a var access token, equals JWT service dot generate token, and then I will pass the user details. So let me just rename this one. I'll just rename it to user, just to make it easier. So now we have our access token, and then I will just create an auth response, or an authorization response, equal authentication, sorry, not an authorization, but it's an authentication response dot builder, and then dot build. And here it will be the access token, which is the access token that we just created. And also we need the refresh token. So here we need our refresh token, and we need, as I mentioned, we need to keep the same refresh token that we received in here. So now let's return an answer. So here you may ask the question, here we have a void, and how can I return a response to my user? So it's so much easy. I will use a new object mapper, the one from faster XML JSON data binding. And here I will use the response.get output stream. And in this output stream, I will write my authorization response. So now I need to add this exception method, or like the exception to the signature, as you can see it in here. So now my method throws a exception. And in here, it's a new object mapper. Sorry, I just forgot to mention that we need to write value, and then we pass this as parameter. So we need to use object mapper dot write value, and we want to write this value in this response.get output stream. And then when the response is back, we will see this as the body of the response. So that's it with this implementation. Now let's go ahead and implement this. Also, we need to add the exception into this, to the signature of the refresh token right here. Now let's start the application and let's test this. Before we start testing, let's not forget something important, which is revoking all the user tokens like we did exactly in here. So for the authenticate, what we do is revoke all user tokens, and also we need to save the new generated token. So this in order to keep everything working as expected. So after generating the access token, I will just revoke all the tokens for this user, and here I will save or persist the new access token that we generated. Also, as I mentioned before, if you intend also to save and revoke the refresh tokens, just you go ahead and watch the logout video and you can inspire yourself from there. So now that's it. Let's move on and test this part. So now let's start the application and test it. So I just click on start, and as you can see here, the application is started. And then as you know, when we start the application, we recreate the schema. So let's go ahead and move on to our postman. And in here, I just prepared the two endpoints that we need. The first one is the register to create a user and get a token. And the second one is our demo controller. And here, if I send without a token, we will get absolutely 403, which is forbidden. And now let's go back and create our user. So here, if I just copy, first of all, we see that we have an access token and a refresh token. So just go ahead, copy this one because the expiration is 1 minute. So I will paste it here and then click on send. So for now, we see that hello world from secured endpoint. This is the message that we typed the last time. Now, if we wait for 1 minute and send again, it will be 403. And after that, we will use the refresh token endpoint. So I will just prepare this one while the token gets expired. So here it will be refresh token, and we have nobody. So like we don't need to pass a body. All we need to do is to pass a bearer token, and the bearer token should contain this refresh token. So I will just copy this one, and here remember that this token is ending with y_ts, and just to show you that it will be returned the same. So now I think 1 minute has already passed. So now we see that we have a 403. So if I try to access again the demo controller endpoint and send, we see that we have a 403. So now let's use this refresh token endpoint, and as I mentioned, it's a post mapping, and also we have this URL, and this token should be the refresh token that we just copied from here. So I will just copy it again and now paste it, and as you can see, it's the one ending with y_ts. So if I send now, here you see that we have this access token and we have also the refresh token. So I'm not sure why it's not formatted, but it should be formatted. Sorry, it's the format right here. It was just text. So now we see here that we have this access token and we have the refresh token. So the refresh token is still the same, and we have a different access token. And if I take it back here, it's still 403. And if I replace it with the new one, I click send. Now we see that we have the response from our backend. So this is how to implement the refresh token. That was pretty much it. I hope this video was helpful for you and it was insightful for you. Just before you go, I just want to remind you, if you're new to my channel, just go ahead, hit the subscribe button and be part of our community. Also, don't forget to join me on social media, on LinkedIn, GitHub, on Facebook, on Discord. So you will have all the links down in the description of this video. So again, I hope you enjoyed this video and see you next time.